On October 4th, officials from a law firm called WilmerHale met with the executive board of the International Monetary Fund. An investigation report by WilmerHale on September 17 found that China's position in the agency's Doing Business Index had changed when IMF chief Kristalina Georgieva was head of the World Bank. This index means how much a state supports private sector investment. In 1 year, China was ranked 7th, the report said. The Chinese were outraged at the possibility of it dropping to no. 65 the following year. Georgieva and other officials at the agency then changed the index's calculation to lower China's position to 7 the previous year. The report added that Georgieva also changed the way the index was calculated to change China's position. As a result of this report, there has been controversy over whether Georgieva should be retained as head of the IMF. The United States has said in a statement that the allegations were very serious, and that it had stopped supporting Georgieva. But a week later, the United States said it would not try to remove Georgieva from office. The French news agency Bloomberg reports that the French have already spoken out in favor of Georgieva and that the British are moving in the same direction. France 24 quotes Georgieva and her supporters as saying that Georgia's opponents inside the organization wanted to stage a coup, those who do not agree with Georgiev's progressive goals. However, some people are totally against such statements. Paul Romer, a professor at New York University and winner of the Nobel Prize in Economics, recently served as the World Bank's chief economist and head of the research division. As such, he was a key figure in the company's work on the Doing Business Index. He explained in an interview with Bloomberg that there is international competition for a better position in the index. As a result, many countries try to exert pressure to see their scores in the index in a slightly better position. Romer says there is a culture among the World Bank to review index numbers and put some countries in a relatively good position with greater advantage. He says the agency's leadership may have wanted to take advantage of China with a good score, but he's not sure. Romer, however, alleges that countries that are under pressure to change their position in the index are naturally differentiating themselves from other countries. And finally, some countries are publishing the index with special benefits. Thus, the World Bank is on the one hand a source of scientific information, on the other hand it is a diplomatic agency. Because they hold diplomatic debates with different countries. But the credibility that is required to publish scientific information is compromised by the lack of strict rules on the source of information by allowing concessions in diplomatic talks. This calls into question the whole organization. A CNBC report explains that the IMF and the World Bank, created in 1944 through the Bretton Woods Conference, have specific objectives. The IMF usually provides short-term loans to its member countries to deal with their economic problems. The IMF also has multiple goals for economic reform in member countries. On the other hand, the World Bank's job is to finance development projects in different countries and to work for poverty alleviation. Most of the World Bank's work is in developing countries. Both organizations have 169 members. The main funding of the IMF is in the quota system. Through this, the total funding of the company is about $675 billion. In the quota system, about 36% of the company's votes are in the hands of 4 countries: the United States, Japan, China and Germany. France, Britain and Italy have about 12% more votes. In other words, only 7 countries have almost half of the votes of the organization. The largest borrowers are Greece, Ukraine, Portugal and Pakistan. On the other hand, World Bank financing comes through issuing bonds and taking loans among global investors. Paul Romer says the IMF and the World Bank were once very important to the world, because at that time it was not possible for a country to get loans from too many sources. Therefore, both the organizations played an important role in providing international capital at that time. But now these companies have become much smaller than the international capital market. In this situation, both the organizations want to do something new to sustain their existence. Romer argues that the purpose of these organizations in the 1950s is not consistent with today's world. So now is the time to rethink the purpose of these organizations. He thinks that the biggest task of this organization now is to keep the diplomatic talks going between different countries. The IMF and the World Bank have been important pillars of the US-controlled Western world order since World War II. But when it comes to the purpose of the organization in a changed world system, the lack of transparency in the organization's operations will call into question its global credibility. If powerful countries could change the rankings in protest of the organization's Doing Business Index calculations, then the importance of the membership of the rest of the countries would be meaningless. Moreover, many are complaining that Georgieva has changed China's position in the index, mainly to attract more investment from China to increase the company's finances. However, it is important to note that this is not the case in the United States.